joining us in just a moment. And Keith Hamilton Cobb is a very busy man. He is a playwright. He's an actor. Keith,
Hey,
how you doing there, buddy?
am I coming at you the right way? Am I right side up? Because
For me, you're kind of sideways. So if you want to turn your screen the other direction, that'll be
okay,
helpful.
give me a second. I don't do this stuff, so it's like,
That's quite all right. That's
okay. So if we do this,
now you're upside down.
upside down, but I can fix that.
Okay.
Okay, we do this,
Ah, now I hear you better too.
and we should be okay. No?
That looks great. Now we gotcha. Looking good. Looking
Yeah,
good.
yeah. All right, all right.
Fantastic. All right, wonderful. So Keith, as I was about to say, I was about to give you the big introduction. So Keith is a very busy man. He is the playwright of the play American Moor, which has been all over town, and I think most recently was with the Red Bull Theater. You had a main stage production with them a few months back, I think before the COVID situation. And just a week or so ago, you guys had a reprise of that, like a reading of it, as part of their Othello 2020 series. So tell us about the creation of American Moor and how that wound up at the Red Bull Theater.
So Red Bull was one of the producers on the off-Broadway production at Cherry Lane that we ran there last fall from August to early October. And we closed in early October, and then there was some time off, and then COVID hit, as you said. They were one of several producing entities on that project, and then there was the pandemic, and there was also this international conflagration around social justice. There was the lynching of George Floyd and the Breonna Taylor case, and
Right.
this big explosion of protest and pushback around issues of social justice. And of course, that has its effects in New York theater, in American theater. Everything in the country is impacted by these events. So the theater shut down. There was fewer and fewer ways for them to remain relevant. So Zoom comes along,
Right.
and everybody's looking for content for Zoom. And the artistic director at Red Bull, his idea was to convene this month-long conversation around race and Shakespeare in the month of October. And he thought that American Moor should be a part of that. And we looked into streaming the archival video that we made at the Cherry Lane, but that had to do with a whole lot of rights and stuff. We couldn't quite make that happen. And I said it would be great to just read it. If we just did a reading, text in hand, then the whatever their level of outreach, people could at least get the words with no pressure on me to actually perform, actually give them what the show was, because really the piece has to be seen, and there's
Right.
no way to put that across on Zoom.
Well, that was one of my big questions for you, Keith, is that you're someone who's been in the theater for many years now. You've been an actor. You've been all around town. And I'm sure for you, it's a huge change being a physical actor, an actor with a big presence, to switch from that theatrical presence, that theatrical format, into a mediated format where you're talking into a screen and you're not even moving, you're doing a reading. There is no really physical manifestation of what you're doing. So what was that change like?
Well, if it's just a reading, we're all right, because to read a text and infuse it with whatever level of emotion you can. Some actors are better at that than others. I'm not particularly good at it, but I knew this text, right? I was in with this text for 7
If anyone
years,
knew
right?
this text, it would be
So
you.
I could put enough of it across on an emotional level for it to be impactful, and I think the text is just emotionally impactful if it was read without any particular. I'm sorry, it's late. Intention towards emotional depth or specificity. That the text would still come across. In general, I think I have a hard time with Zoom and Zoom projects,
Right.
and creating. It's never going to be theater, and people have come a long way since its inception because they've had to. But I always
Right.
find it falling short. I'm always annoyed by it, and I never look forward to being a Zoom actor. But in a reading, I think it was fine. You know,
Right.
I think it allowed a whole lot more people to hear and know about this play.
Well, I agree with you. A reading, as you say, there's a different set of expectations in a reading, a stage reading, than there is in a full theatrical presentation, because you're not really expected to have a great level of movement or blocking or anything like that. So there is less pressure in that sense, or less of what the audience would demand. But this American Moor, this was made, the first production of it was the one in the fall with Red Bull, or this is.
Oh no!
Or was it done before that?
It was written in 2000 and late 2011. It had its first live performance in 2012, and has been evolving all those years. So 7 or 8 years in there. It's been performed many places in the country, major cities, DC, Boston. And New York, and it was always my intention to bring it into New York, and I don't think it's done there. Actually, I think the run in the fall was a strange window we had to get into the Cherry Lane. It was the space they had, so we took it, but it was just before Labor Day. The city was empty. You run the week after Labor Day, people are back, but they're putting their kids in school. Nobody's really going to theater until, a week or so on. And before we knew it, we had to close, So I have been doing everything. Once the show closed, I turned my attention to the publishing. We published with Methuen, Bloomsbury Methuen, and it's been getting bought up in colleges and high schools around the country. So it's being taught widely. Accompanying lessons on Othello, and sometimes independently of Othello. There continue to be conversations around the work, for that reason and others. And I'm doing everything I can to show up for those conversations, because I think it's life as a important theater piece that's going to generate. It is really at the crux of this discussion trying to happen with racial bias in American theater right now. It is.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think you hit it right on the mark. I think, this, for anyone who hasn't had a chance to check out the play, you really should. It's really fantastic. And I think the reading that we've been discussing is still up on the social media of Red Bull Theater. I think you can still go on there and catch that, the replay of that. But it's a really wonderful piece where, for anyone who might not have seen it or might not be aware, I'll just give a quick summary, if I might. Although maybe you'd be better a candidate to do that. But my quick summary would be that it's about an actor, then that's you, who's coming into an audition for Othello, and there are a lot of identity conflicts with himself and with what he's being asked to do in terms of there's a white director and he's a black actor, and there are some challenges and some conflicts in what the expectations are from the director's side and from the actor's side, and the actor, and that's you, is bringing into it a lot of the tension, a lot of the racial conflict, a lot of the different things that are present in that discussion. So I think you did a really amazing job of encapsulating that whole divide, that whole argument, that whole schism between the one and the other in that piece. So talk to us about, is this the first play that you wrote, Keith, or have there been others?
No, Rod. I've written all my life. I was studying English before I became an actor. I've written works for the screen and the stage. The thing that I say to people is that American Moor is the only piece that really, when I compare it to the other things I've written, it looks like it should have far exceeded my skills. American Moor is a really important play, and I don't say that about anything else in my body of work. It is a truly important play, and I think really quite unique in many ways. And when I look at that, I don't know what energies were being channeled. There were some ancestors at work in writing this play, because honestly, because it speaks to so much that is pertinent about Black American life, and so they were speaking through me. The rest of my writing, at least dramatic writing, does not really quite meet this level. There's been a lot of it, and there will be more. I will continue to write, but this is really a high point in the work.
Well, it seems like it's a very personal play too. Is this some kind of variation of something that really happened to you, or is this a little bit of reality with a lot of dramatic license?
Yeah, more of that. There no doubt. I couldn't have, if I were not the African American male living this experience, I couldn't write this play. So there is that
Right.
portion of it that is certainly autobiographical, but by no means all of it. I create a character who is indicative of, I think, all men like me. Generally speaking, certainly there are exceptions, but there are things in issues, ideology, experiences endemic to the Black male American experience, but that is not to say that people coming to see American Moor won't see themselves. It really ultimately transcends that, and people realize that it's about humanity. It's about the human experience. It's about everybody who doesn't feel seen, doesn't feel heard, doesn't feel like they're given room for their true expression.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I don't know if Othello is what brought you to Shakespeare, or what. Before I jump into what I'm going to jump into, what brought you to Shakespeare in the first place? Was it Othello, or was it something else?
No, it was love of the language. It was love of the language, and then really, when you're introduced to Shakespeare, by and large, most American kids have a hard time finding their way around the language, and I did. I was no different than anyone else. I synthesizing that, from the page to my brain was very difficult. And then I started to see some performances, and luckily they were good performances. And there are not a lot of those in the U.S. Not a lot of good Shakespeare being done. Not a lot of good Shakespeare being done in the U.K. either, as far as I'm concerned. So I saw some really strong performances, and the actors were able to make me understand stuff, even though when I read it, it was hard to understand. When they said it, it made sense, and that was magic. I was like, well, how come when I read this, syntactically it's weird? I can't quite follow it, but when he says it, I know exactly what he's doing and feeling, and that to me was the mark of a great actor. So these people have to be really wonderful, and immediately I wanted to do that.
Well, you hit it. It's with Shakespeare. So many people get intimidated by the language, and they feel like they can't even take the journey into trying it, because there's such a barrier between what they would consider Old English and it's like a foreign language altogether, and they're almost afraid to even try it. Whereas all you need, as you say, is a good actor that can kind of transcend that and bring the context of it, bring the emotion of it, bring the reality of the situation onto the stage. And then all the language just becomes, just a tool to make that happen. So going back to something that you mentioned earlier about how it's your play, American Moor, it's not just limited to the Black experience. It's a kind of like an everyman situation. I personally, and I had this conversation with another performer from the New York scene, with Deborah Ann Bird. We had a similar conversation a couple of months back, where I was telling her how I came to Shakespeare with Othello, because I'm a Middle Eastern guy by descent. I'm born and raised in the U.S., but my parents are from the Middle East, and when I was growing up, I didn't really see a lot of people that looked like me in literature or in pop culture or anything like that. And in middle school, at some point a teacher introduced me to Shakespeare with Othello, and on the cover was I'm trying to find the picture. I'm not finding it now. I think it's Laurence Olivier, and he was made up to look like a Moor. more depending on how you define it, could be a black man or it could be a Middle Eastern man, maybe from Morocco or something like that. And in that depiction, in that photo on the cover, I saw someone that looked very much like people I grew up with. So for me, that was it was like the light bulb went off, and all of a sudden I went into the text, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute. Shakespeare is supposed to be the most inaccessible, most difficult thing in all of Western literature, but somehow it's very natural for me. I really have a strong connection to it. So ever since then, I've just delved deeper and deeper into it. So for you, the entry point wasn't necessarily a specific play; it was the actors that brought to life for you.
Yeah, and the language in all the plays, that the ones that I liked. I mean, there were several of them that I saw or read that I thought, this is a dog. I don't ever need to see this again. And I feel that way about. I feel that. Honestly, I feel that way about 50% of his plays. They're colloquially obscure. They're hard to put across. I don't. They have no value to me. The other 50% are wonderful.
Well, that brings up something that I wanted to jump into, is that we were talking a little bit earlier about how there's the challenge when we've moved from the in-person, the live theatrical presentation into the current Zoom era, as you might call it, because of the coronavirus situation. And I think, as we said earlier, you did a very nice job in kind of bridging that gap with the reading with Red Bull Theater. But at the same time that's going on, you have another series that's currently playing with another wonderful group that we spoke to earlier in one of our other episodes, and that's Shakespeare At. Mm-hmm. And you guys are doing radio plays. Right now you're doing the Tempest, and previously it was Richard II. Mm-hmm. So tell me, going from the one extreme where you have, the full body and the physical presence and the stage to move around and fully express yourself, and then that goes to a more limited thing, which is the Zoom and the reading, and then all of a sudden you remove the whole visual aspect of it and go only into audio with a reading. Tell me about the process of doing that and how that's different for you, what that was like.
Well, interestingly, that is where Zoom and other Zoom-like processes and platforms work well, because you bring a bunch of actors together who are recording to a central place, to mm-hmm. a place with some engineers, right? And they mm-hmm. can see each other, and they are all reading from texts on their screens, mm-hmm. and communicating about them, and you can stop and go, right? You can do a soliloquy until it's right. Mm-hmm. You don't have to do anything. All of the action, all of the noise of action and stuff, they put in later. There might mm-hmm. be some heavy breathing and some, situational stuff that you do, grunting and groaning, and layer that in. But the rest is just being able to sit at your desk and read the poetry, which I find wonderful. And, these people at Shakespeare At, I didn't know about them. I didn't know what they did, and I was introduced to them. And they have, in this very difficult time, gone out and found grant money to do this work. And you'd have to talk to Sean Haggerty, the artistic director, about how he did that. But mm-hmm. when they told me, we have a union salary to pay you to do this work, I said, well, God bless you. You're a rock star. How did you, right. So I can sit at my desk and read Shakespeare and you'll pay me during a difficult time? That's like hitting the lottery, man.
But he was when I had a chat with Sean a couple of months back. I think this is right when Richard II was coming out, their first radio play. He was telling me about some of the logistical challenges of recording actors, all over the world, not even just across the U.S. In New Jersey, New York, L.A., UK, and bring that all together. Did you have any kind of learning curve with recording that audio and getting that transferred over to him? Because it seems like you are a man of the theater. You're not necessarily like very electronic oriented.
Well, I'm certainly not very electronically oriented, but there wasn't much I needed to do. If I could set up a microphone and their engineers who are consummate professionals talked to us and said, okay, well, we can't depend on your Wi-Fi. You need a hardwire line to your modem. things like that, but generally simple. And once that was done, all I have to do is sit there and read text.
And you do a fantastic job at it.
Well,
So
thank you.
so Keith, what is coming up next for American Moor? Where are we going to see that next? Is there anything in the works, or is it going to be in print, and hopefully we'll see it at some point again in the future?
Well, it certainly is in print, and you can get it on Amazon or at the Bloomsbury site if you'd like to read it. It's available and being purchased, so that's wonderful. Because it's being purchased, because it's being taught, there are conversations going on all the time, attempts to engage the discussion, as we discussed earlier, around issues, using this as a catalyst to discuss social justice where it intersects with theater. Because nobody knows what the next real theater is going to be, I can't tell you I know what's going to happen with American Moor. I have been spending the COVID months adapting Othello. I've been writing, doing my adaptation of that play, which I think is really a rather unplayable play. I think it's I think it's one of Shakespeare's dogs, and I have had to pay attention to it because of everything that is expressed in American Moor. Because I am this large African American presence, so that's the go-to. That's what everybody. Well, how about Othello? Nobody says how about Hamlet. Nobody says how about Romeo. How about Othello? So it has had to be my focus, and I really am at the place where I want to put actors in a room and begin to workshop this new text, because some really interesting discoveries are being made as I have worked on that over the COVID months. And there's some really magical stuff in there that I'm very eager to explore. So maybe somebody's going to let me do that. I mean, we need to find money and COVID-safe venues where a bunch of actors can get together and hide out, right, for months at a time, right?
I tell you, that's one of the little lovely things about Zoom, is that you don't necessarily even have to have a space. You could all just be in your living rooms and be with Zoom and just kind of work it out together. It's not the same.
Right. That's right. But what you miss is the rough and tumble, stuff of the actual play, right? You don't have. Right. It's not the same. You can do the table work. Right. You can do the table work, but you can't do the rehearsal.
Absolutely right.
You really can't.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. But one more thing before I let you go, Keith. Well, two things, actually. One is something that you mentioned just briefly there about you're always called upon for Othello, but not necessarily for Hamlet or Romeo. What do you think of age in terms of casting? I know that, when I came up, I'm sure when you came up, there were issues with colorblind casting, as we called it back in the day, or gender neutral, all that kind of stuff. What do you think about age neutral casting? It seems like there's a tendency these days towards elder productions. I saw a couple of elder Romeo and Juliets, and Ian McKellen is going to be doing an elder, so to speak, Hamlet coming up. What do you think about age in casting? Is it relevant or is it not relevant?
Sure, it's relevant, Rodney. I mean, it's like you always look for the nonsense in show business, right? There's nonsense, right? Ian McKellen playing Hamlet, he can only do that because he's Ian McKellen, right? Because they know they will put butts in the seats, right? But any other old guy wanting to do it, they're not going to. They had John Douglas Thompson do it in San Francisco, and he's a contemporary of mine, and apparently he did it well. But the very idea that Hamlet is 60 something.
Right.
It just doesn't. So, I mean, I sincerely mean that. I think diversity and non-normative casting can be a thing if you are interrogating something and really interrogating it, really doing the work to figure out, okay, well, what are we trying to figure out about this 67-year-old guy being Hamlet? You know, if it's just non-normative, color and gender all over the stage, in this world, in this play, I think you obscure by and large the issues that the play was written to explore and to express. Because I'm busy wondering, well, why is that a brown guy? Why is that Hamlet a woman? Why is that?
I agree. I agree.
As long as there's reasons for it. I mean, exploration should be free to everybody. Everybody should do it, but don't try to sell me you're being diverse. They're often when we get to doing that, we're just being weird on purpose and calling it creativity.
Yeah,
You know,
it's often it's done, as a selling point. I think it's done best when there is something that illuminates the text from doing it.
hmm
If you're doing it and it informs the play somehow, if it adds some new layer to the text, it gives some new dimension that wasn't there before, then I think you hit it. Otherwise, it's not always the best thing.
it's yanking it for money. Very honestly, I'm sorry. That's and if you're a celebrity, you can get away with that, right? They'll do it, right? And
Right.
it's like who do you think you're fooling, right? You think you're being clever
It's
just because you can get Ian McKellen to do Hamlet? I'm not. I don't really want to see him do Hamlet. Very honestly, you know.
it's at the end of the day, it's a business, and everyone's trying to sell tickets, as you say. You put butts in the seats. So, Keith, for the work you've been doing with Red Bull Theater, they have their Othello 2020 project, and that's ongoing. And I think that culminates this coming week.
This coming Wednesday. That's right.
Okay, and are you taking part in that?
Yeah, yeah. That's been an
Okay,
ongoing discussion for 4 Wednesday afternoons. We've been reading through the text and talking about it, and it's facilitated by the scholar Ayanna Thompson. So that's been fun. But the last one's this weekend, this Wednesday at 2 o'clock.
okay, all right, fantastic. So, anyone who wants to check out American Moor, you can visit Keith on his social media. That's Keith Ham Cobb here on Instagram. He's also on Facebook at Keith Hamilton Cobb Authentically. You can also visit the Red Bull Theater, their Red Bull Theater all over social media, but check out their Facebook particularly. Also for Shakespeare At, you can visit their social media. You can visit their website, shakespeare-at.org, for the four parts. The fourth was just released tonight. 4 parts of the radio play version of The Tempest, which was really, really good. I was listening to some of it today. So, Keith, it's a pleasure speaking to you. Keep up all the great work, and hopefully we can connect again in the future.
Absolutely.
Hey,
Thank you.
thanks so much.
Tell your people to check out AmericanMoor.com. That's where the majority of the data about the show
You heard it.
is parked.
You heard it straight from the source, folks. AmericanMoor.com, correct?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Keith. Have a great night.
Thank you. Peace.
All right. Take care. Okay, so that was Keith Hamilton Cobb of American Moor with the Red Bull Theater and of The Tempest with Shakespeare At. You can check out all that content online. It's all there. It's all free. And check it out